All right, welcome everybody. We are starting today with Shrimad Bhagavata Mahapurana, Book 10, Discourse 43. Discourse 43 is entitled "The Elephant Kuvalayapida Killed." So we're just at the point of Krishna and Balarama are about to attend the wrestling tournament hosted by Kansa. The wrestlers are all there, and most of the Gopas of Raja under their chief Nanda are there and seated, and the big festivities are about to start, which of course are a series of prearranged traps to kill Krishna and Balarama. Sri Shuka began again. Having finished their bath, etc., the next day, and hearing the loud noise of the wrestlers and the din of kettle drums, O chastiser of foes, Sri Krishna and Balarama went to see the tournament. Having duly reached the entrance of the amphitheater, Sri Krishna saw stationed there the elephant Kuvalayapida, as directed by its driver. Since, as you may recall from last week's, this is a trained killer elephant that Kansa has given orders to be stationed there to kill the brothers on their way to the amphitheater and stage it as an accident of a freak elephant attack. But this elephant is actually trained to kill people. Tightening the cloth round his waist by way of preparation for an encounter and tying up his curly locks of hair, Sri Krishna, the scion of Shura, challenged the elephant keeper in a voice deep as the rumbling of clouds. O driver, allow us passage, clear out without delay. If not, I shall presently dispatch you along with the elephant to the abode of death. Threatened thus, the driver, full of rage, goaded the elephant, which had already been enraged, and which looked like Yama, towards Sri Krishna. Running towards him, the lordly elephant quickly seized Sri Krishna with its trunk. Krishna, however, slipped off from the coils of the trunk, and striking the elephant with his fist, disappeared in the midst of its legs. Failing to perceive Sri Krishna, the infuriated animal, which could discover things through scent, caught hold of the Lord with the end of its trunk. He, however, forcibly escaped from its hold. Tightly seizing the mighty elephant by the tail, he then violently pulled it by way of sports to a distance of 25 bows, or 100 cubits, 4 cubits to a bow in this system of measurement. Without pausing, even as Garuda of beautiful wings would drag a cobra, the immortal Lord whirled with the elephant, which was being caused to revolve contrary-wise when it turned either to the left or to the right. In other words, Krishna staying behind it, and if the elephant tries to turn left, Krishna moves the other way and is dragging the elephant by the tail to keep behind it. Even as a boy would with a calf. Then, advancing in front of the elephant and striking it with his hand, the Lord, in his attempt to throw it down, ran swiftly before it, so close that he looked as though being touched by it at every step. While running, the Lord sportfully toppled down on the ground and immediately got up again and moved aside. Taking him to be fallen, the angry elephant struck the ground with its tusks, but missed him. Infuriated at its prowess having been frustrated and being urged by its keepers, the lordly elephant ran towards Sri Krishna in rage. Approaching the elephant, even as it came rushing, Lord Sri Madhusudana caught hold of its trunk with his hand and hurled it down on the ground. Treading on the fallen animal like a lion over its prey, and sportfully extracting its tusks, Sri Krishna killed with it the elephant as well as its keepers. Leaving the dead elephant where it lay, the Lord duly entered the amphitheater, tusk in hand, stained with drops of blood, as well as with those of ichor from the elephant's tusk where it was ripped out, and with the tusk resting against one of his shoulders, and his lotus-like face bedecked with drops of sweat appearing on it. He looked most charming, in a very warrior sort of way, splattered with blood. Surrounded by a few gopas and with the tusks of the elephant for their excellent weapons, Baladeva and Sri Krishna, who are solicited by the people, entered the amphitheater, O Raja. Present in the amphitheater by the side of Balarama, his elder brother, the Lord appeared as a thunderbolt to the wrestlers, a jewel among men to the male persons, love incarnate to the ladies, a kinsman to the cowherds of Raja, a chastiser to the vile princes, Kansa and his brothers, a mere child to his parents, death personified to Kansa, the ruler of the Bhojas, as deficient in strength and immature of body to the ignorant, compared to the much bigger and more muscular wrestlers he is supposed to take on, the supreme reality to the yogis, and the highest divinity to the Vrishnis. Finding the elephant Kuvalayapida killed, and also perceiving the two brothers difficult to conquer, Kansa, though self-possessed, felt much terrified at that time, O protector of men. Decorated in a queer fashion, decked with quaint jewels and garlands and clad in weird garments and captivating the mind of the lookers-on with their brilliance, the two mighty armed brothers shone in the amphitheater like a pair of actors dressed in excellent garb. Gazing on the aforesaid foremost persons, the people of the city as well as of the country who were seated on the galleries, O protector of men, and whose eyes and faces were blooming with an outburst of ecstatic joy, drank in the beauty of their countenance with their eyes, but did not feel sated. They seemed to drink off the two brothers with their eyes, to lick them with their tongue, to inhale them with their nostrils, and to clasp them with their arms. Mentally, they're not actually going and physically clasping them. As though put in mind of their story, by the sight of their comeliness of form, excellences, loving disposition, and intrepidity, the onlookers spoke to one another in the light of whatever they had actually seen and whatever they had heard of the two brothers, saying things like, actually descended through a part of Lord Sri Hari himself, who has his abode in the waters in the form of Narayana. These two brothers have appeared on this earth in the house of Vasudeva. This one was, it is understood, born as a matter of fact of Devaki and taken to Gokula. Dwelling all this time incognito, he grew up at the residence of Nanda. By him was put to an end Putana, as well as the demon who appeared in the form of a whirlwind, a demigod, the demons Keshi and Dhenuka, and others of that class, and the two Arjuna trees uprooted. A footnote here points out that the people of Mathura, in their sharing rumors with each other, have mixed up some of which demons were killed by which brother, which makes sense. This is hearsay from a city away. By this boy were the cows along with their keepers rescued from a forest fire, the snake Kaliya subdued, and the ruler of the Devas rid of his pride, when Govardhana was borne by him on one hand for a week, and Vraja protected from rain, storm, and strokes of lightning. Beholding with joy his ever cheerful and smiling face enlivened with penetrating glances, the cowherd women overcame agonies of various kinds without any effort. The wise declare that, protected in every way by the yonder boy, this race of Yadu will become very well known and attain prosperity, renown, and glory. And here is his elder brother, the glorious Balarama of lotus-like eyes, by whom was slain Pralamba, as well as the demon who came disguised as a calf, and others, of whom Baka was the foremost. Again, they're not entirely right about who killed which demons, but close enough. While the people were talking thus and trumpets were loudly sounding, Chanura, the foremost of the king's wrestlers, accosted Sri Krishna and Balarama and spoke as follows. O Nanda's darling, deliberately addressing him like a child. O Balarama, both of you are esteemed as heroes. On hearing of you as skilled in wrestling, you have been invited by the Raja, who has been eager to see you. Subjects doing precisely by thought, word, and deed what is agreeable to their Raja attain to prosperity indeed, while those acting otherwise than this meet with contrary results. It is well known how cowherds, from the time they begin to tend calves, daily pasture their cows with great joy in woodlands, diverting themselves with wrestling. Therefore let yourselves as well as ourselves, O boys, do what is liked by the Raja. If the Raja is pleased, beings will be pleased with us, for the Raja is an embodiment of all creatures. Hearing the aforesaid speech of the wrestler Chanura and welcoming it, Sri Krishna, who regarded wrestling as something to his liking, gave the following reply, which was appropriate to the occasion and place. We too, who dwell in the woods, as well as yourselves, are the subjects of this Raja of the Bhojas. Let us always do what would please him. Through such behavior, his infinite grace will descend on us. Youngsters as we are, we shall sport with those who are our equals in strength. Let there be a well-matched wrestling bout, so that no sin may attach to those present in the assembly, O wrestler. Chanura replied, You are neither a youngster nor a lad, nor is Bala, the foremost of the mighty, of such description, by both of whom the elephant that possessed the strength of 1,000 elephants was disposed of in sport. Therefore you both should contend with powerful rivals. There will be no unrighteousness involved in your doing so. Show your prowess against me, O scion of Vrishni, and let Mushtika try his strength with Bala. Thus ends the 43rd discourse, entitled The Elephant Kuvalayapida Killed, in the first half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Discourse 44, Kansa Slain. Sri Shuka began again. Challenged thus, Lord Madhusudana of unflinching resolution immediately closed with Chanura, and Balarama son of Rohini with Mushtika. Interlacing their hands with the hands and their feet with the feet of their rival, Sri Krishna and Chanura, and simultaneously at the other side of the arena, Balarama and Mushtika, tugged at one another vehemently with intent to overthrow their opponent. They struck with their elbows, the two elbows, with their knees the knees, with their head the head, and with their chest the chest of each other. They tried to frustrate each other by revolving, pushing, squeezing in their arms, throwing down, and slipping to the front or to the rear of their opponent. Eager to score a victory over each other, they hurt the body of their adversary by lifting up, carrying, throwing back, and even fixing him to a spot, attempting wrestling pins. Full of compassion, all the ladies present there collected in batches and spoke to one another about the contest being ill-matched between strong and weaker rivals, O Raja, saying things like, It is gross unrighteousness on the part of the king's courtiers who countenance such a contest, alas, between the strong and the weak, while the Raja sits looking on. What comparison can there be between the two wrestlers, Chanura and Mushtika, of adamantine frame, and closely resembling a pair of two large mountains, and the two lads of extremely delicate limbs who have not yet attained their full youth? Forfeiture of religious merit will surely fall to the lot of this assembly. As a matter of fact, one should never stay there where unrighteousness fully rears its head. Recognizing the faults of those present in an assembly, a wise man should not enter that assembly. A man keeping silent makes a false statement, or pleading ignorance incurs sin. Mark the lotus face, dripping all over with perspiration, even like a lotus bud sprinkled with water, of Sri Krishna quickly shifting his position about his adversary. Don't you see the face of Balarama with reddish eyes, full of wrath as it is for Mushtika, and enlivened by a bellicose spirit accompanied with risibility? In other words, that he's in kind of the fervor of fighting. Blessed is the soil of Raja on which treads in a merrily sportful spirit this most ancient person, whose feet are adored by the guardian of Mount Kailasa, and Rama, the goddess of beauty and prosperity, disguised in a human semblance and adorned with sylvan flowers of various kinds, tending cows in the company of Balarama and playing on his flute. Evidently, these things are being spoken by different women to each other. One who is pleading that the contest is unfair, and another who understands who Krishna is. Then going into that. What austerities did the Gopi women perform, by virtue of which they imbibe with their eyes his bewitching form, the very essence of elegance, which is not only unsurpassed but unequaled, is not embellished by anything external, is eternally new and hard to attain, and which is the unfailing abode of renown, splendor, and divine glory. Blessed are the women of Raja, who celebrate him in song while milking their cows, pounding the corn, churning their curds, plastering their floor with cow dung, rocking the cradles, lulling their crying babies, sprinkling and sweeping their houses, and attending to other such duties, with a mind full of love and their throat choked with tears, whose movements are inspired by the thought of Sri Krishna, who is no other than Lord Vishnu, who took wide strides while measuring the three worlds during his avatarana as the divine dwarf. Possessed of endless merit are those women who, having heard his music as he sallies forth from Vraja in the morning and returns in the evening along with the cows, playing on the flute, come out hastily on the road and behold his smiling countenance enlivened with kind glances. While the women of Mathura were thus talking with one another in anxious tones, as aforesaid, Lord Sri Hari, the master of yoga, made up his mind to get rid of his opponent, O jewel among the Bharatas. Hearing the aforesaid remarks full of apprehension of those women, his parents, Vasudeva and Devaki, who were unaware of their son's strength and overwhelmed with anxiety out of affection for them, were filled with remorse. As Sri Krishna, the immortal Lord, and his antagonist Chanura contended with each other according to the various popular modes of wrestling, in that very manner did Balarama and Mushtika struggle with each other. His limbs being shattered by the hits of the Lord's limbs, which are as hard as strokes of lightning, Chanura, so the tradition goes, fainted again and again. Not like actually fainted unconscious, but was stunned repeatedly. Springing with the swiftness of a hawk and clenching the fingers of both his hands into fists, the latter, Chanura, full of anger, struck Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, on the chest. The Lord did not stir under his blow, any more than an elephant would when slapped with a garland. Sri Hari caught hold of Chanura by his arms, and whirling him several times, dashed him to the ground, his life having become extinct as a result of his being whirled with vehemence. This is not the first time that Sri Krishna or Balarama have killed people by whirling them so hard, presumably hard enough that the whiplash breaks their neck or their back. His ornaments and garlands having fallen off and his locks disheveled, the wrestler fell like a thunderbolt. Precisely in the same manner was Mushtika struck violently with his palm by the mighty Balabhadra, who had also been struck with his fist by the latter in the first instance. Violently shaken and sore afflicted, and vomiting blood from his mouth, Mushtika dropped lifeless on the ground like a tree blown down by the wind, after just a palm strike from Balarama. Balarama, the foremost of warriors, playfully and scornfully slew with his left fist Kutta, who came up next to fight him to the death. And that very moment, Shala had his head knocked off with Sri Krishna's foot, while Toshila, another wrestler of repute, was split in two, and both fell down dead. Chanura, Mushtika, Kutta, Shala, and Toshila having been dispatched, all the remaining wrestlers ran away, anxious to save their life. Drawing near them their Gopa mates and closing with them, the two brothers sported in the arena while the trumpets were being sounded, dancing with their anklets jingling. With the exception of Kamsa, all the people present there exceedingly rejoiced over the achievement of Balarama and Sri Krishna. And pious men, including the foremost of the Brahmanas, exclaimed, "Well done, bravo!" The chief of the wrestlers having been struck down, the 5 chiefs of the wrestlers having been struck down, and the rest having fled away, Kansa, the ruler of the Bhojas, stopped his trumpets, and, so the tradition goes, uttered the following injunctions. Drive out of the city the 2 ill-behaved sons of Vasudeva, confiscate the wealth of the Gopas, and put in bonds the wicked Nanda. On the other hand, let Vasudeva, the evil mind, the vilest of all, be made short work of at once, and so also Ugrasena, my father, who has sided with my enemy along with his followers. While Kamsa was raving thus, ordering the deaths and imprisonment of everyone he dislikes, Sri Krishna, the unwearied Lord, flew into a rage, and springing with agility, speedily ascended the elevated dais where Kamsa sat. Seeing Sri Krishna approaching as his very death, the heroic Kamsa, heroic obviously not in the sense of quality of character, but just like in a mood of fighting, rose at once from his seat and snatched up his sword and shield. Sri Krishna, who was possessed of formidable and terrible energy, quickly caught hold with a firm hand of Kamsa, who was moving right and left like a hawk in the air, sword in hand, even as Garuda, son of Kashyapa, would forcibly seize a serpent. Grasping him tightly by the hair, his diadem slipping off, and hurling him down from the lofty dais into the arena, Lord Sri Krishna, the support of the universe, depending on none other than himself, jumped down in person upon him. He dragged him hard, though already fully dead, along the ground, the world witnessing it, even as a lion would drag an elephant. Very loud cries of "Alas, well-a-day," uttered by all the people, O ruler of men, then arose and rent the air. Some of them in dismay at their king being beaten to death before their eyes, and others who are praising Krishna. since with a mind full of dismay, he ever saw before his mental eyes that very Lord armed with the discus, while drinking or speaking, walking to and fro or lying asleep, nay, even while breathing, Kamsa attained that very form difficult to attain. Burning all over with rage, the 8 younger brothers of Kamsa, Kanka, Nyagrodha, and others, rushed towards Sri Krishna in order to get square with their brother by avenging his death. Taking up a bludgeon, Balarama, Rohini's son, however, made short work of them, even as they came fully prepared with such great impetuosity, as a lion would kill the cattle. Cattle drums sounded in the heavens. Full of delight, Brahma the Creator, Lord Shiva, and other special manifestations of divine glory, extolled the Lord, covering him with showers of flowers, and celestial apsaras danced out of joy. Grieved at the death of their near and dear ones, O Maharaja, the widows of the deceased came over to that place, severely and repeatedly beating their heads with tears in their eyes, embracing their husbands lying dead in the arena. And the word here used for the arena is the bed of heroes. The bed of heroes is a traditional Sanskrit word for a battlefield. The women wailed at the pitch of their voice, lamenting their lot and repeatedly shedding tears of grief. Ah, beloved Lord, the knower of Dharma, O kind-hearted one, fond of the helpless, due to your having been slain, we, your own, with our homes and progeny, have been ruined. Bereft of you, its master, this city, O jewel among men, does not look charming any more than we, all its festivities and felicity having ceased. You wrought immense harm, even to innocent creatures. It is for that reason that you have been reduced to this plight, O Lord. What oppressor of living beings can attain happiness? This Sri Krishna indeed is the source, the end, and the protector of all created beings in this universe. Anyone showing disrespect to him can never prosper. Sri Shuka went on. Having comforted the royal ladies, the Lord, who is the protector of the universe, caused what they call obsequies to be duly performed with regard to the slain for their welfare in the other world. In other words, the Antyeshti Samskara, the funeral rites. Having then secured the release of their mother Devaki and father Vasudeva from bondage, Sri Krishna and Balarama bowed to them, fully touching their feet with their head. Perceiving their sons, who had bowed to them, to be the rulers of the universe, Devaki and Vasudeva did not embrace them, afraid as they were of showing disrespect to them. In other words, they don't quite have they don't feel the parent to child relationship the way that Nanda and Yashoda, who actually raised them as children, did. They see them more as gods and not so much as their own children. Thus ends the 44th discourse, entitled Kansa Slain, in the first half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Discourse 45. The Lord brings back his Guru's son. Sri Shuka began again. Having come to know that his parents, Vasudeva and Devaki, had grasped the truth about the divinity of the two brothers prematurely, before they had enjoyed the supreme bliss of loving them as their own sons, which was interfered with by being too conscious of their divinity, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Person, spread his own enchantment of Maya, which infatuates his own people, so that such knowledge might not endure. Approaching his father and mother in the company of his elder brother Balarama, and bowing in humility, the jewel of the Sattvatas spoke respectfully, addressing them as Mama and Papa in order to delight them. Though you have been all along full of longing for us, O Father, the joys of witnessing the infancy, childhood, and boyhood of your sons have never fallen to your lot. Ill-fated as we are, the privilege of living by your side could not be attained by us, nor was that joy experienced by us, which children dwelling in their father's house and fondled by their parents do. Even through a life of 100 years, a mortal is not able to get square with his parents, by whom is brought into being and nourished this body, in which all objects can be realized. The servants of Yama actually make that son eat his own flesh on departing from this world, who, though able-bodied, does not, with his body and resources, maintain his parents, He is dead though breathing, who though capable, fails to support his mother, aged father, virtuous wife, infant son, guru, a brahmana depending on him, or one who has sought him for protection. Therefore, these days have slipped in vain by us who have failed to serve you, helpless as we were, our mind being constantly afraid of Kansa. Evidently here he was playing the ordinary child and in part of trying to kind of shift their attitude from seeing them as divine to seeing them as children. Be pleased, O father and mother, to forgive that sin on our part, who failed to render service to you, subject as you were, and sore oppressed by that evil-minded fellow. Sri Shuka continued, deluded by the foregoing speech of Sri Hari, the soul of the universe, though appearing as a human being through his Maya, his parents experienced supreme felicity as they placed him on their lap and folded him in their arms. Bathing him with streams of tears and bound with ties of affection, the couple said nothing, O king, bewildered as they were, their throats choked with tears. Having thus comforted his parents, Lord Sri Krishna, the son of Devaki, presently made his maternal granduncle, Ugrasena, king of the Yadus. Indeed, he all along was the rightful king of the Yadus. He had been unjustly deposed and imprisoned by Kansa. And Krishna said, be pleased to command us, as well as the people, O Maharaja. The Yadus ought not to sit on a royal throne because of the curse of Yayati. When I am waiting on you as a servant, the gods and others will bear tribute to you, bent low. What wonder then that other rulers of men should do so? So in other words, because of an ancient curse, the curse of Yayati, which is a whole other story, the Yadus are not supposed to ever sit on a royal throne. And so despite the fact that Krishna would probably be the popular choice among the people to be the king, to honor the curse of the lineage, he refuses to ever officially be a king, and instead is installing Ugrasena as king. Calling back from the quarters all his kinsmen and relations, the Yadus, the Vrishnis, the Anthakas, the Madhus, the Dasharhas, the Kukuras, and others that had fled through fear of Kansa and had been pulled down on account of their staying abroad. Pulled down as in reduced in wealth because they were living away from their ancestral lands and their agricultural properties and so on, from which they drew their ancestral incomes and were spending money, living on it abroad and so on. Consoling them fully and highly gratifying them with riches, Sri Krishna, the maker of the universe, settled them in their own houses when they had been duly honored. Protected by the all-powerful arms of Sri Krishna and Sankarshana, and having realized their ambition and accomplished their purpose, they lived happily in their homes, their agony having disappeared due to Sri Krishna and Balarama. They felt rejoiced to gaze every day on the lotus-like countenance of Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, which was ever full of ecstatic joy, charming and enlivened with compassionate and smiling glances. Drinking now and again with their eyes the nectar-like beauty of the lotus-like face of Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, even the aged there at Mathura turned young and acquired great strength and energy. Meanwhile, duly approaching Nanda and embracing him, Lord Sri Krishna, the son of Devaki, and Sankarshana, O King of Kings, spoke as follows. O Father, by you two, meaning Mother Yashoda and yourself, full of affection, both of us have been nourished and fondled with utmost care. Parents' affection for their progeny is surely more profound than the love they cherish for their own self. He is the real father and she the mother, who nourish like their own offspring the babies cast off by their relations incapable of nourishing and protecting them. Return you now to Vraja, O dear father. Having afforded delight to our near and dear ones, we too shall follow suit in order to see you, our kinsmen, disconsolate through affection. Having thus consoled Nanda, along with the other people of Vraja, the immortal Lord honored them with reverence with articles of wearing apparel, ornaments, utensils, and other presents. Thus addressed by Sri Krishna and overwhelmed with affection, Nanda hugged the two brothers and, filling his eyes with tears, returned to Vraja along with the other Gopas. Vasudeva, the son of Shura, O Raja, then duly caused to be performed in accordance with the scriptural ordinance by his priest, the sage Garga, and other Brahmanas, the purificatory rite of investiture with the sacred thread, conferring the rank of a Dvija, the twice-born, with respect to both his sons, the Upanayana Sanskara. Having appropriately worshipped them, he gave to them, when they were duly adorned meaning with the sacred thread. Duly adorned, referring to the Brahmanas performing. Fees for their services, as well as cows fully decked with gold necklaces and other ornaments, as also with silk wreaths and accompanied by calves. Recalling his promise, his resolve made at the time of birth of Sri Krishna and Balarama, Vasudeva, who was possessed of a lofty mind, gave away even those cows that had been mentally gifted by him on that occasion, and which had been unlawfully seized by Kamsa. In other words, when Sri Krishna and Balarama were born, Vasudeva wished to donate cows to the Brahmanas, but couldn't because he was in prison and all his property had been seized. So he mentally gave cows, and now he physically gave those cows. Having gone through the purificatory rite of investiture with the sacred thread, and thereby attained the rank of a Dvija, the twice-born, the two brothers of noble vows thereupon embarked on the vow of Brahmacharya under the instructions of Garga, the guru of Yadu's race. So the vow of Brahmacharya, in this case, consists of 3 vows, successively entered into by a religious student belonging to the twice-born classes being Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So the first vow is called the Gayatra. It lasts for 3 days, and it is undertaken as a preparation for learning the holy Gayatri mantra. So after the sanskara, you maintain celibacy and the rules of Brahmacharya for 3 days. Then your guru initiates you in the holy Gayatri mantra, and then you take the second vow, which is called Prajapatya, which extends to the time of commencing the study of the Vedas. And this is followed by the third vow called the Brahma vow, which lasts, you maintain Brahmacharya until the end of your Vedic studies. Concealing by their actions, which looked more or less human, their unclouded wisdom that had not been acquired through another, but is innate in themselves, and seeking to reside in the house of a guru with the object of attaining knowledge in order to set an example before the world of the order of studying under gurus. The two brothers, who were the omniscient rulers of the universe and the source of all learning, now actually sought the presence of a Brahmana of Ujjain, Sandipani, the son of Sandipana, by name, born in the family of Kasha, of Kasha Gotra. Having duly approached him, so it was Garga who did their sanskara, gave them the sacred thread and so on, but they're going off to study under a different guru for their actual Vedic studies. Having duly approached him, the two brothers tamely and reverently waited upon him as a god with devotion, thereby demonstrating irreproachable behavior towards one's guru. Gratified with their services rendered with genuine devotion, Sandipani, the teacher, that foremost of Brahmanas, taught them all the Vedas, along with the auxiliary branches of learning, being Shiksha, or phonetics, Chanda, or prosody, Vyakarana, or grammar, Jyotisha, or astronomy and astrology, Kalpa, or the science prescribing the ritual and giving rules for ceremonial and sacrificial acts, and Nirukta, or etymology, and the Upanishads, the crowning part of the Veda, expounding the secret meaning of the Vedas and treating of Brahman, as well as Dhanurveda, the science of archery and martial arts, including its secrets, the knowledge of mantras by means of which the various astras, or mystic missiles, are invoked, and the deities presiding over them. He taught them the Dharmashastras, the codes of laws, such as the Manusmriti, and the various systems of philosophy, such as Mimamsa, as well as the science of logic and the science of politics with its 6 branches, those dealing with peace, warfare, expedition, encampment, exciting dissension, or causing the separation of allies, and depending on one's own allies. The two brothers, who were jewels among the foremost of men and the originators of all sciences, learned everything in a single lesson, a protector of men. In other words, they only had to be taught anything once. Their recollection was perfect. With their mind fully controlled, they mastered in the course of 64 days and nights the 64 arts. And we are given here the list of the 64 arts. They are singing, playing on various musical instruments, dancing, acting and gesticulation and mimicry, drawing and painting and calligraphy, painting figures of various designs on the various parts of the body with musk paste and other fragrant substances, preparing for use in worship various designs with grains of rice, flowers, etc., preparing a bed of flowers, coloring the teeth and limbs, and coloring articles of wearing apparel, paving a floor with precious stones, preparing a bed, making a bed is its own whole art, using a pot full of water as a musical instrument and treading on water, showing miracles of various kinds, not real miracles, but like sleight of hand, stage magic, preparing chaplets and wreaths of flowers, making ornaments of flowers for the ears and braid of hair, etc., modes of beautifying the body with clothes and ornaments of various kinds, painting ornamental figures on the ears, making perfumes and cosmetics of various kinds, making ornaments of various designs, juggling, appearing in various disguises of one's choice, sleight of hand, culinary art, making drinks of various tastes and colors, and alcoholic liquors of various kinds, weaving and needlework of various kinds, working puppets by strings, making musical instruments of various kinds, solving riddles, capping verses. Capping verses is an ancient Indian game in which somebody says the first part of a poetic couplet, and then you have to very quickly finish the couplet while keeping the same metrical scheme and rhyming it. Skill in uttering tongue twisters, the art of reading manuscripts easily and quickly, so speed reading, dramaturgy and story writing, completion of incomplete verses or part verses, making ligatures, canes, arrows, etc., spindle work, carpentry, architecture, testing valuable metals and precious stones for their grade and quality and so on, alchemy, coloring precious stones, knowledge of latent minerals, nursing and treating plants, setting game rams, cocks, and quails to fight as sport, teaching parrots and other birds to imitate human speech, making an enemy quit his place by means of a charm, cleaning and dressing the hair, reading letters removed from one's sight and divining the nature of substances held within one's palm. In other words, a little bit of like clairvoyance and psychic intuition. Knowledge of books written in the language of barbarians, in other words, learning foreign languages and foreign alphabets. Fluently talking in the different Indian dialects, reading good or bad omens, making diagrams by means of letters arranged in different orders as mystical formulae to be worshipped or worn as an amulet. In other words, yantras, yantra shastra. Splitting hard substances such as diamonds into two or more pieces of different shapes, which is difficult to do. Reading the thoughts of others and bringing them out in a verse. Lexicography, knowledge of prosody, increasing the number of an object by various devices, playing tricks, showing off one's clothes as made of a superior texture than what they actually are, playing dice, attracting remote objects, playing children's games, the practice of charms, magical charms, foreknowledge of the party going to win a debate, and keeping goblins and vampires under one's control. In other words, black magic used to command shadowy spirits. So they spent one day studying each of those things. And then, considering their education to be complete, they persuaded their guru to ask for the preceptor's fee, the guru dakshina, of his liking, O Raja. So the tradition in Vedic culture like this is that after you go study with a guru, normally you in fact bring a guru dakshina when you first study with the guru as well. But then at the conclusion of your studies, the guru is supposed to ask for a gift, can be anything at all, totally up to the guru. And it is the duty of the students to give that to the guru. So they're telling the guru to ask for whatever he wants. Clearly perceiving such marvelous glory of the two brothers, as well as their superhuman intelligence, and deliberating with his wife, O Parikshit, the aforesaid Brahmana, Sandipani, asked for, as his Guru Dakshina, his child who died in the ocean at Prabhasa, saying, so be it. So he's asking them to resurrect his child from the dead. Saying, so be it, and mounting their chariot, the two brothers, who were great car warriors of endless powers, presently reached Prabhasa, and going near the seashore, squatted there for a moment. Coming to know of their divine character, the god presiding over the ocean, Samudra Deva, brought presents for them. The Lord said to him, let my Guru's son be restored at once, the same child which was swallowed up by you in a great wave here. The god of the ocean replied, I did not carry away the child, O Lord. There is a great demon belonging to the Daitya class, Panchajana by name, who lives underwater in the form of a conch shell, O Krishna. The child was carried away by him. Hearing it, the Lord speedily plunged into the water, but on killing the demon, did not find the child in his bowels, presumably because it was a long time ago and the child has long since been fully digested. Taking the conch that formed his body, the Lord returned, or presumably he's not literally a conch shell, but is some sort of sea creature that lives inside the shell. Taking the conch, the Lord returned to the chariot. Then, going to the beloved city of Yama, Samyamani by name. So he just leaves Bhumiloka entirely and is going to Yamaloka, to the realm of the dead. Sri Krishna, who was solicited by the people, accompanied by Balarama, who had a plow for his weapon, blew the conch. Hearing the blast of the conch, Yama, the chastiser of the people, the god of death, offered to them both worship on a grand scale, accompanied with devotion, and, bending low, addressed Sri Krishna, who has his abode in the heart of all created beings. O Vishnu, all-pervading Lord, disguised as a human being by way of sport, what can we do for you both? The glorious Lord said, impelled by my command, O great ruler, fetch my Guru's son, who is brought here as a result of his own karma. Handing over to their Guru his son, brought by Yama with the words, so be it, the two brothers, the foremost of the Yadus, said to him, be pleased to ask for another boon of your choice, after having already resurrected his son from the dead and given him back. The Guru replied, the debt of your Guru has been fully repaid by you both, O my child. Which of the desires of him who has been a Guru to pupils like you can remain unfulfilled as a matter of fact? Return to your home, O valiant ones. May your glory purify all, and let the Vedas remain fresh, here as well as hereafter. Thus permitted by their Guru, the two brothers forthwith returned to their city of Mathura, O dear Parikshit, in their chariot swift as wind and thundering like a cloud. All the people of Mathura greatly rejoiced to behold Balarama and Sri Krishna, whom they had missed for many days, like people who had once lost and then recovered their wealth. Thus ends the 45th discourse, entitled, The Lord Brings Back His Guru's Son from the Abode of Death, in the first half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Sanhita. Discourse 46. The Lord relieves the agony of Menda. Sri Shuka began again. A beloved friend and counselor of Sri Krishna was Uddhava, the most distinguished of the Vrishnis, and a direct disciple of the sage Brihaspati, the Guru of the Devas, and foremost in intelligence. Clasping his hand with his own on a certain day, Lord Sri Hari, who alleviates the suffering of those that flee to him, spoke to Uddhava, who was most beloved of and exclusively devoted to him. Proceed you, gentle Uddhava, to Vraja, and bring delight to our parents Nanda and Yashoda, and relieve in particular the agony caused by separation from me of the Gopi women through my messages. The latter, the Gopi women, have not only given their mind to me, but their very life is centered in me. They have renounced for my sake everything connected with their body and have mentally taken refuge in me alone, their beloved friend, the highest object of their affection, their very self. I stand through thick and thin by those that have not only given up their interests in this as well as in the other world, but have also set at naught their moral obligations for my sake. I, the most beloved of all their beloved objects, being at a distance from them, the women of Raja, O dear Uddhava, remain forgetful of everything, thinking constantly of me, and overwhelmed with intense longing occasioned by separation from me. With their mind absorbed in me, the Gopi women are, in most cases, somehow propping up their life with great difficulty on my assurances of coming back. Sri Shuka continued, thus instructed by the Lord, and mounting a chariot, Uddhava drove to Nanda's Gokula, a station of cowherds, carrying the message of his master, Sri Krishna, with great reverence. The Blessed One reached Nanda's Vraja while the sun was just setting, his chariot obscured with the dust raised by the hoofs of cattle that were entering Vraja at that same time. The place was rendered noisy by bulls and rut, contending with one another for the sake of cows and heat, and by cows rushing to meet their calves, though oppressed with the weight of their udders. It was graced with white calves capering here and there, as well as with the music of flutes, and it was full of noise on all sides, accompanied with the sound of the milking of cows. Again, it shone most resplendent, with gopi women richly adorned and singing the noble deeds of Balarama and Sri Krishna, as well as with cowherds. The place ravished the mind with its dwellings of cowherds, characterized by the worship of sacred fires, the sun god, newcomers, cows, brahmanas, the ancestors and gods, as well as with frankincense that was being burnt there, and lights and garlands with which the houses were decorated. It abounded in groves in full blossom on all sides, and was rendered noisy with the notes of birds and the humming of black bees, and was graced with beds of lotuses crowded with swans and Karandava ducks. Delighted to meet and embrace that beloved servant of Sri Krishna arrived at his door, Nanda showed him every regard, looking upon him as Sri Krishna himself. When he had been duly treated to rice boiled in milk with sugar, and was comfortably seated in a couch, and had been relieved of his fatigue by massaging his feet and other such services, Nanda inquired of him as follows. Is our friend Vasudeva, the delight of Shura, O dear Uddhava, doing well, O highly blessed one, now that he is free from bondage, united with his sons and others, and surrounded by his near and dear ones? Luckily enough for us, the wicked Kansa, who always hated the pious yadus that are given to the practice of virtue, has been killed, along with his followers, by his own sin. Does Krishna remember us and his mother, his other relations and playmates, the cowherds in general, the people of Raja, that looked upon him as its protector, the cows, the woodland of Vrindavana, and the Govardhana hill? Will Sri Krishna, the protector of cows, come over to this place, even once, to see his own people? Then we shall be able to behold his countenance with a shapely nose and winsome smiles and glances. We were protected from forest fire, storm, and rain, the demon Arishta, who came disguised as a bull, and a python, perils that were difficult to overcome, by Sri Krishna, who is exceedingly magnanimous. Even as we remember the exploits of Sri Krishna, his sportful sidelong looks, laughter and talk, O dear Uddhava, all our activities get slackened. Our mind gets absorbed in him as we behold the streams, hills, and woodlands, as well as the playgrounds graced by the footprints of Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation. I look upon Krishna, and Balarama too, as the foremost of divinities come down here on this earth for accomplishing some momentous purpose of the gods, as the words of Garga indicated. They killed in mere sport Kansa, who possessed the strength of 10,000 elephants. Obviously not personally, but counting his armies that at his command and so on. And his wrestlers, as well as Kuvalayapida, just as a lion would kill animals. Krishna snapped the most powerful bow, measuring 3 talas, as a leader of elephants would break a sugar cane, and held the hill with one hand for a week. While the 2 brothers were sportfully slain here in this land of Raja, the demons Pralamba, Dhenuka, Arishta, Tranavarta, Baka, and others, who had conquered devas as well as demons. Sri Shuka continued. Thus vividly remembering again and again all about the 2 brothers, Nanda, whose mind was full of love for Sri Krishna, kept quiet, seized as he was with excessive longing and overwhelmed with a flood of love. Hearing of her son's exploits being recounted by him, Yashoda too shed tears of love, her breasts overflowing with maternal affection. Perceiving such supreme love of Nanda and Yashoda for Lord Sri Krishna, Uddhava joyfully spoke to Nanda as follows. Uddhava said, "Indeed, you two, Yashoda and Nanda, are the most praiseworthy of all embodied beings here on this earth, O bestower of honor on us all, of being the servants of the Lord, who has been made available to us only through you, and that such unique love has been conceived by you for Sri Krishna, who is no other than Lord Narayana, the father and controller of all. Indeed, Balarama and Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, they are the material and the efficient cause of the universe. They are also the Purusha and Pradhana. Entering into the various living organisms, they control the various types of consciousness, eternal as they are. Focusing one's impure mind on Sri Krishna for an instant at the time of death, one speedily attains the supreme goal, burning the store of karma and becoming one with the absolute Brahman, and attaining a form consisting of sattva unmixed with rajas and tamas. You cherish such great devotion to that supreme spirit, Lord Narayana, the soul as well as the source of all, who has assumed a human semblance for some purpose. What meritorious act remains to be done by you two?" He's saying rhetorically, meaning clearly none. "At no distant date, will the divine Sri Krishna, the immortal Lord, the protector of the Yadus, come back to Vraja and bring delight to you, his parents. Sri Krishna will make good what he told you. On coming back after killing Kansa, the enemy of the Yadus in the midst of an assembly, grieve not, O highly blessed ones. You will at no distant date find Sri Krishna by your side. He dwells in the heart of all created beings, even as fire and wood. Indeed, none is dear or unwelcome to him who is not identified with a body. Nor is anyone superior or inferior, nor even unequal in his eyes, he being the same to all. He has neither father nor mother, neither wife nor sons, etc. None is his own or alien to him, nor can a body, much less birth or action, be attributed to him. Even as such, he descends in high, low, and mixed species of life in the world for the sake of Leela, with a view to protecting the virtuous. Though untouched by the gunas, he assumes the qualities of sattva, rajas, and tamas, and sporting with them, though really transcending them, the birthless Lord evolves, maintains, and absorbs the universe by means of these gunas here in the realm of Prakriti. Just as when looked at with a revolving eye by a revolving person, the earth is seen rotating if you spin in place. Or while the mind is the doer, the soul is recognized as such due to its identification with the mind, so is God held to be responsible for the creation, etc., of the universe, although as a matter of fact, the creation is not being done by God, but it is being done by the gunas. He, the divine Sri Krishna, the alleviator of the distress of all, is certainly not only your son, for he is the son, the self, the father, the mother, the ruler of all. Nothing which is seen or heard of has gone by or is still existent or which is yet to come, which is immobile or mobile, big or small, is really worth naming apart from God, for he alone is everything. He alone is true. The night slipped past Nanda and Uddhava while they were thus chatting, O king. Quitting their bed towards the close of the night, kindling their lights, and duly worshipping on the threshold the deities presiding over their house, the gopis of Raja began to churn the curds very early in the morning. With rows of bangles round their wrists pulling the cords that revolved the churning staff, their cheeks shining with bright earrings that rocked with the motion of their arms, and their faces painted with red saffron from the Balkh territory, so imported saffron that they bought from traveling merchants. The gopis looked very charming, with gems in their girdle, brightened by the lights, their hips, breasts, and necklaces shaking with the motion of the churning. Now rose to the heavens the music of the women of Raja, who were celebrating at the pitch of their voice the exploits of Sri Krishna, the lotus-eyed Lord, blended with the gurgling noise produced by the churning of the curds, both of which combined to drive away the evil forces operating in the quarters. Seeing a chariot plated with gold at the portals of Nanda, now that the glorious sun god had appeared at the horizon, the women of Raja inquired of one another as to whose chariot it was and suggested as follows: may it be that Akrura, by whom the lotus-eyed Sri Krishna was taken away to Mathura, and who thus accomplished the purpose of Kansa, has turned up once more. Is he now going to offer oblations to the spirit of his deceased master with our bodies? While the women were talking in this strain, Uddhava returned to Nanda's residence from the bank of the holy Yamuna river, having finished his daily routine of bath and devotions there. Thus ends the 46th discourse entitled Sri Krishna Dispels the Agony of Nanda, in the first half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. And I'm thinking that might be a good stopping point. The next discourse is very long, and it's almost 10 a.m. And I think that it might work better to start with the next discourse next time, because it's really one worth savoring, the dialogue between Uddhava and the gopis. And it's quite a lengthy one. So I think that'll be good to start with next week.
Awesome. Thank you, Devalo.
Yeah, thank you guys.
It's always good to see you all.
Yeah, good to see you, Nishaji.
Right. Yep. Yep. You have a recording off, or you want to keep it on?
I can turn it off. Yeah.
Yeah.